What's up? It's Tatami. Welcome to my channel. Here I talk about whatever I want to, and today I want to talk about the fact that I think The Princess and the Frog needs a sequel. Not because it did particularly well in the box office, it didn't. Not because I think the story was not, brought full circle. It was a simple story. It was wrapped up. My annoyance basically feels like Prince Naveen needs to pull himself together and show us on screen that he's pulled himself the fuck together. In my, full opinion, as somebody who grew up with all the other princesses, it's still annoying to this day that Princess Tiana had to work as hard as she did, has had such a lazy prince with so little to offer. To bring you back, I was about 16 or 17 when Princess Tiana came out. And the one thing that I was really looking forward to at that advanced age as somebody who had grown up with the Disney princesses was a black prince. I was looking forward to an unambiguously black prince. I had noticed that all the other princesses seemed to get a love interest that was their race. And at that time, we didn't have Moana in them. We had like Lilo and Stitch. This young girl had, a love interest. And when I noticed when the movie had to do with the girl, she got a love interest that was her own race. When the movie was like a woman of color who was just kind of there was a chance she'd end up with a white boy. And so, that was like Esmeralda was somebody who I, looked up to as a young girl, but noticed full well that, she was heavily sexualized, heavily taken out of context. And of course, there was like the captain of the guard. Pocahontas was somebody who, as a half Latina woman, I looked up to Native American indigenous characters because when you're from a tribal, indigenous, black or indigenous background, native background, you kind of have to take in people, who may or may not be totally for you. And the same also went for my girl in Atlantis. I'm totally blanking on her name at the moment, but I read her as Afro-Latina. I know a lot of people today read her as just Latina, but as a little girl, just the way she talked, her big lips, all that stuff, the mechanic from Atlantis, I read her as black. So Tiana was coming out, and I thought I was going to get a black prince. I was going to get a man of opulence. I was going to get a man of wealth, and I was going to get a man who was likely darker skinned, at least a little melanated. I was thinking I was going to get the man that they animated as John Henry later on. A couple years later, Disney animated a John Henry, short, and it was beautiful. It was wonderful. It was a beautiful dark-skinned woman. It was a beautiful dark-skinned big man, black man. But the only big, beautiful, dark-skinned black man that we got in The Princess and the Frog was Tiana's daddy, and he dies super early on. We see one-ish scene with him, and he's like, good gumbo, and he's gone. And we think he's going to be replaced by this up-and-coming prince, and this is how much I wanted a black prince, that when I saw Naveen, I started trying to do the mental gymnastics to believe he was a mixed black man, that he was just light-skinned, that, this was all blah, blah, blah. But since then, I've done the research. He's supposedly a Mediterranean prince. Mediterranean is very specific. It's near Africa, but it's not African. That's Greek. That's, we tan here. That's what that says to me. Prince Naveen is not a black man. He is a very lazy Mediterranean man with little to nothing to offer besides title and sweet talk, who managed to, bag the catch that is Tiana. And, it was frustrating. There are so many things that are frustrating about the Princess and the Frog movie, right? There's the frustration that her prince ain't shit, that she has worked all this, like, okay, like I said, I was a fan of Cinderella. Snow White was also one of my favorites. One of the things I really liked about them as a child who was adopted, as a child who was abused, as a child who went through some shit, what I really loved about those two princesses was that their dedication to still being good and still working hard paid off in the end. Because at the end, they got carried off. They had somebody recognize their hard work, man or no man. They had somebody who recognized their hard work and was like, you've earned this. Let me treat you. Treat yourself. Okay, so Cinderella was just looking for a night off, but then like she ran into a man who was like, I love your character. There's something about you. Treat yourself. And he pursued her. Snow White, people get on it because the prince kisses her in her sleep. I'm like, anybody who's been in a relationship where they like have started something with somebody knows that there's kind of those boundaries that occur, that it's like you kind of like, sometimes you take that step because you know that you're allowed to take that step of kissing someone in their sleep. So for me, Snow White, it wasn't like he's just this stranger who wandered in. Same with Sleeping Beauty. They knew these men. They had already kind of started to establish these relationships with these men and like done all this stuff. This wasn't sex while somebody was sleeping. This was, they got a kiss while they were sleeping from somebody who they'd been flirting with, implying heavily that they were into this relationship, all this stuff. So it's like this grand moment of satisfaction at the end. Welcome to the ball. Welcome to this. The biggest pressing issue in Sleeping Beauty is should her dress be pink or blue? The biggest like thought in a Snow White is like, does she say goodbye? Like, how does she say goodbye to each person? Does each person say goodbye to her in a certain type of way and see her off as somebody that they love, who they are now like letting to somebody with more power and authority who she also knows and also trusts? So Princess Tiana gets none of this. She gets a place that she has worked for herself, built all this herself. Her man is still largely useless. I don't believe he's even at the level of a sous chef by the end of it, because he couldn't even mince a mushroom at the midway point. So I don't believe he's in any way useful. I don't believe he's a useful businessman. I don't believe he's useful in anything but encouraging Tiana in her, endeavors. So, okay, baby, you just go pee-pee. You don't have to tell me every time. I'm talking about movies, baby. Yeah. Okay, so Tiana gets none of this. She gets nobody. There's no gift to Tiana. Basically, she has to fight every tooth and nail, every fucking step. She gets turned into this like frog. She has to fight to be not a frog. She has to fight to find the right root worker, the right mystical person, because I guess when you're practicing African traditional religion, you're liable to just run into charlatans and crazy people who want to, insert you with the devil at all times. That doesn't happen with Christianity at all. Never run into charlatans there. But don't worry, when they portray a medicine man, a juju woman, all this stuff, a shadow man, they have to put in all this negative, like, craziness. That's just like the only time that Disney has ever really addressed the craziness of Christianity and Abrahamic religions is definitely the Hunchback, and that's probably because it was already in the story. I really enjoyed the Hunchback as a kid, not just because I identified with Esmeralda, how she looked, how she was treated, but also because Frollo was an evil I understood as a child sexual abuse victim, as somebody who was a victim of somebody who said that they were like Christian, as somebody who was an authority figure that other people trusted. It was like a very crazy, precarious situation for me. That's the only time a Disney villain has ever really touched on reality for me, but the Shadow Man for me didn't touch on anything but Christianized fears, stereotypes, assumptions. It didn't go into anything else. So basically what we have is this situation where the Black Princess kind of gained nothing at the end. You see her gain her own personal goals, but she didn't need any of pretty much everyone else could have been just kept out of her situation, except maybe the crocodile, because she ended up having to use the crocodile to get the racist to rent her the space instead of just giving it to somebody else. But it just like, there's just an ending that's just so unsatisfactory on so many levels, which is why I believe they need a sequel. They need something to show that Princess Naveen, he really is a princess. The most useless of princess. Princess, when people think of like prissy, not princess like, brave Rapunzel trying to set their own like, right in life. This is like a useless like flower. Just Prince Naveen is useless. He does nothing. He adds nothing. He, in fact, takes somehow from the princess that he's trying to crown and takes her energy, takes her time, takes her ideas, takes every bit of effort she's put in there, and he adds nothing. Even when his family comes, there's no resolution. There's no like, oh, now like we see you're serious and you've got this wife and this beautiful situation going. Why don't you guys come back to the Mediterranean and rule something, like even Meghan fucking Markle got a chance to come into Great Britain and join society. I mean, I know everybody was like racist to her and acted like she just wasn't cheerful enough. Of course, the black princess didn't smile enough for the white people. But anyways, even Markle got a fucking half a chance. And so it's just like, is Tiana even a princess? What happened? What did Naveen add to her life besides, validating some of her shit? You know what I'm saying? Overall, he was pretty useless to me. And that's why I feel like Princess and the Frog needs a sequel. They need to step it up and do right by Princess Tiana, or make a whole new princess that is a black princess. Yeah, I mean, I do think that they still need to do an Indian princess because, right, they've done plenty of white European princesses. They've done an Islander princess, Moana, and they've done an Islander movie that was just good, Lilo and Stitch, right? It's got that silliness of Stitch, but it's got that very serious colonizer. What happens when people are taking over an island of indigenous people, tragedy strikes, you're just trying to keep your family together, but the U.S. law is bearing down on y'all, and you can't do what you would have done 50, 60 years ago, a generation ago. That's why Lilo and Stitch, you know what I'm saying? They've got an Asian princess, even though Mulan, I mean, historically could never have fought against the Huns. It's still very powerful, very representative for Asian girls. We've got the Middle Eastern princess with Jasmine. We've got let's see, who else do we have? I'm like blanking. Pocahontas is the Native American. We have a few people who are kind of princesses. They're representative, but they're not princesses. So we have like Meg and let me think. I'm like blanking on people, but my point is that I'm okay if they just scrap the Princess and the Frog idea, because nobody wants to see a black girl just be a frog. They keep doing this. I'm gonna make a video about this. They can't seem to stand to see a black person just win as a black person animated. They have to change us into something else. They can't just animate us for an hour and a half. They have to make us into some kind of amorphous blob, a different race, a different creature. It just can't be a black person. So I'm okay if they just ditch the Princess and the Frog franchise and make a franchise with a black princess, with a black prince. That's something. That's not ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully dark skin, hopefully unambiguously black, hopefully a clear black prince. I don't care if he's a Nigerian prince. Let's make him a Ghanaian prince, something like that people usually stereotype, but he's the legit real deal. I would love that. But they need to redo the Princess and the Frog. They need to redo what they did for us, because it was a failure. It was a gigantic failure. Prince Naveen is a failure. I wouldn't want him to marry me, and I wouldn't want him to marry anybody I know. at all. Not a single Black woman I know deserves Prince Naveen, least of all Princess Tiana. So may your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video where I talk about whatever the hell's on my mind.